We hereby call to order the January regular meeting of the Meridian Library District Board of Trustees. We'd like to excuse Trustee Christensen tonight. She's not able to attend. Which takes us to item number 2 on the agenda, the public comments. The public, as always, is given multiple opportunities and multiple methods to make comments to the board, and we appreciate all of those comments as they come in. The option is to appear here in the meeting and offer comments, to post comments on our webpage, or email the trustees. And there's nobody that signed up for comments tonight, so we will move on to item number 3, the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains routine items that are not likely to require debate and cover some of the minor issues that have come up since our last meeting. And they are approved as one motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Josh.
Mr. Chair, I propose that we approve the consent agenda as published.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Further comments? All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next up, item number 4, the financial reports. We'll turn the time over to Nick and/or Emma. Can't think of your name tonight, Emma. Thank you.
That's okay. So presented with board meeting packets were disbursement approvals for October and November 2024, and then quarter 4 FY24 financials. So kind of wrapping up FY24. The audit is complete and we will have an audit presentation, but what you saw on the financial reports was the last set of reports for FY24.
Okay. Audit report next board meeting.
Hopefully we touch base with them this week and they said they were wrapping it up, but we'll have to check their availability.
Okay.
So hopefully in February.
Okay. Great. Questions on the financial reports?
Mr. Chair?
Josh, go ahead.
Emma, as I was looking through them, I kind of had a thought as I saw the credit card payments, and there were some Delta tickets for personnel conferences and development and pro development. And looking at the final budget numbers, it looked like that was one area where we went a little bit above on projected versus actual, and which I don't have a problem with at all. I think it was only like 105% of budgeted. But it got me to thinking about all the credit card miles that are accumulated each month. Or does the library enroll with the bank with a cashback system, or are those being put to good use?
We do. We have a points system that gives us direct cash back with our current credit card. And that credit card also has a lot of structure built in for purchasing transparency and responsibility. So we are happy with our current credit card provider, and they do give us cash back on a points type system.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for that. I have no further questions.
Chairman Grove and Emma, I have a question. Actually, I have several. The first one is, I noticed on quarter 4 financials, we were over budget on collections, and I just want to clarify that's because we finished expanding or moving and filling out our collections at Pinnacle, correct?
It is from Pinnacle, and we also had some allocation to circulating devices and kits, which was a priority item for us. We just had a couple budget lines that ended up going over and a couple budget lines that ended up going under when everything settled at the end of the year. But overall, budgetarily, we did well.
We did. My second question is about the database info charge for the database Info USA Marketing. What database is that used for? Does that sound familiar? Was it a large charge on the October?
Can you say
bill
that one
payments?
again?
Info USA Marketing. I
which
think it
one
has
is.
something to do with Unbound, but I'm not sure.
Let me double check on that
Okay.
one. I think that one might be the Ref USA database that we've had.
That was just what I was. I'm
Um,
really unfamiliar with, and I wasn't sure what that was.
I'm pretty certain that was one of the ones that has gone through a few different companies over the years of like who actually owns it. But I'm pretty certain that's the Ref USA research database.
And then my last question is, we Trustee Cummings touched on the travel expenses. I was just curious what the travel was for. What conference?
Yeah.
That would be Live Learn X in Phoenix, Arizona, taking place next week.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Emma, I've got oh, go ahead, Josh.
Sorry, just in regards to the personnel development conferences and leadership training and great opportunities, I think, do you guys give the staff the option of, hey, doing a per diem and giving them the option to drive to conferences that are close enough, within a day kind of thing? Or is it just like, what's that process look like?
Yes, if it is usually within the state for the most part, they'll take a library vehicle and drive. If they want to take their personal vehicle, they can. We discourage it because we don't pay for mileage and things like that because the vehicle is available. But if it's in Arizona, and then they're flying obviously, and then we use the GSA per diem rates for in whatever city the conference is in. So we just follow that federal guideline.
Cool. That's good to hear because just, for the public's awareness, when I was in the military, the option to drive, if you coordinated that for a family vacation with time off, it kind of killed two birds with one stone. It was pretty good use of resources, I thought.
And I've got a few questions on some of the high dollar amounts just to educate me. The Unbound Furniture Refresh, $25,500. Was that in the budget?
Yes, it was in the amended budget.
Okay. And that's just because of wear and tear, life of the building, regular.
So when we moved into the new building at Unbound, we didn't buy new furniture for that building. We repurposed a lot of the furniture that we bought in 2015. And so we needed to get some furniture that was more purpose purchased for how that building is set up. And some of those items were nearing the end of their life cycle as well. So,
Okay, thank you. And then what is Space Saver Intermountain LLC?
that is shelving, I believe.
Okay.
That
For Pinnacle?
Pinnacle and Orchard Park shelving.
Okay. 22,000 for Gale Senage Learning.
Yes, that is the I'm going to say it wrong. Udemy platform for the public to access.
Okay.
It's a learning platform.
And then the last one on my list, Freeform for $10,000.
Freeform, that is a furniture one. I would have to look and see exactly which location that is at, but it's furniture.
Okay.
And you will see those higher charges at the beginning of the fiscal year like this, where most of like our contract, like subscriptions and things do come. They are set to come out at the beginning of the fiscal year, and so that's why we see some of those big ones right off the bat in October, is because we can't with appropriations commit to dollars outside of a fiscal year, so we try to align as many things as we can to line up with the fiscal year. So
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no other questions, let's do these action items in two pieces, one for item A and one for item B both, and I would entertain a motion to approve those as shown here.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Laura, go ahead, please.
I move that we approve the Q4 fiscal year financial reports.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Further questions on item letter A? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the Q4 24 financial reports, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then I would entertain a motion for item B.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
move that we approve the October, November 2024 disbursements.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is item number 5, office building lease agreement. Nick, we'll turn that over to you, please.
all right, thank you. We have been looking for a long time on what to do with the staff as we get ready to start the renovation project here at Cherry Lane. And one of the pieces that we need to accomplish as we go forward is to have a space for our support staff over at the annex across the parking lot, for them to be able to process materials for all the branches that are not undergoing renovation. And so we've been looking at places. It's a little difficult in the Meridian market to find exactly what we need. And so we found, I think we ended up looking at probably like 6 or 7 different spaces. And each one had uniqueness to it. Some of them worked better than others. But ultimately we landed on the one that's in front of you. It was by far the cheapest. It was the closest to our admin building, and it will provide us with a bridge space until we can combine the admin building and that building upon the completion of the Cherry Lane renovation. So we've worked with the realtors to get those leases to line up with one another, so that when we are ready to make that move in 3 years, we're well suited to do that structurally. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Grove?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Nick, I just had I saw the numbers, and good job with the realtor team negotiating what I consider to be certainly a solid value proposition. I think it was around $2,700 a month for, is that about right, for 1,500 square feet of commercial Class B property in Meridian. My only question for you is, like, because it's 2 separate office suites that add up to that 1,500 feet, is that going to be big enough? Because it looked to me like, well, that's about half the size of what you would need, I would imagine. But I'm not the expert.
It is not ideal in the sense that we would like to have, like you said, at least twice, and we would like to not have it separated. It is separated, by about 30 feet within the building, but we've looked at it. It will meet our needs. It is not a long-term solution, but it is by far the cheapest option out there. And right now, being able to get into a facility that will work with us with the term rates that we have, from the different legislative mandated pieces that we have to deal with, that can sometimes be tricky when we've tried doing things in the past, and to line it up with what we have, it will get us through to what we need to have a more ideal situation for a long-term solution in 3 years. So it will work. It's roughly, it's actually going to be bigger than what we have currently, I believe, or close to it at the annex. So, and I'll talk about it in my director update, but we're also moving Jenny from out of that building at the annex over to the admin building. So we will have one less person, kind of, but we're also adding the supervisor that was approved earlier in the fiscal year. So we will make it work. Like you said, it's not that big. I would like it to be bigger, but the options between that 2,000 and 5,000 that are in Meridian are really not easy to find. If you want 20,000, or if you want to pay 28
Class A,
or if you want to pay 28 a square foot triple net, we're looking at it that we're talking 72,000 instead of 33,000 a year. So it's not the perfect solution, but it's our best solution.
And I guess the question within the question is, you're not going to be coming back to us later, like 6 months from now, with, hey, we need a bigger space, and we got this other lease lined up.
No, we're looking at this 3 years down the line. You'll see something then, but not any time between now and then. We have trying to do everything we can to make the Cherry Lane project go through as smoothly as possible.
Other questions from trustees? I've got a few, Nick.
Okay.
So how many of our team members are in the annex now? Approximately
10.
10? Okay.
8,
Okay.
7. I can't count that fast.
Okay.
I think it was 7. So
And,
it would be
um,
about the same.
This here is a letter of intent. I'm assuming there will be legal forms for the lease itself.
Yeah. So the letter of intent allows us to then go through and do all the final paperwork with the realtors and then have it reviewed by legal. But
And will that come back to us then at that
the,
point?
this would allow us to move forward with it.
As long as nothing material changes in the terms.
Correct.
Tentative move-in date?
Depends on how the paperwork goes. As it's written, it's set as March 1st, but that is kind of a fluid date. Even if we got it tomorrow, we're not going to just flip the switch and move everything. It'll take a little bit of time to move everybody over. So we'll do it in phases, most likely, because there's other things that will have to be done in terms of making sure that we have internet and that we have accounts transferred over for mail and things like that. So it'll take a little bit of time once we have the green light to move forward to be able to actually get butts in the seats over there.
And then furniture and fixtures?
We will be primarily using what we have, at least for the move-in phase, and then we will look at if there's purpose need for the space on what we don't have to be able to bring with us. But for now, we're going to utilize what we have throughout the district.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair,
please.
I have a question about, I know there's some options to renew. What's our timeline in terms of best case scenario for the rental in March 1st out?
So I would say if it depends on the timeline for Cherry Lane and how that kind of shakes out. If we're looking at, I would say we would be looking at probably 2027 before we're looking to get out of this out of this lease and out of the lease for the admin building. So my guess is that it would be leading up to fiscal year 28, which would be October of 27, when we would want to be out of those leases, but we might have a little bit of overlap so that it's not impossible for us to move out of one place and into another. But that's a guess. A lot can kind of go into those decisions as we get closer to those fiscal years. But that would be my hope, would be to have a consolidated facility at the beginning of fiscal year 28.
Thank you.
Okay. So the item before the board then would be to have a motion to approve the lease agreement.
The letter of intent.
Excuse me, the letter of intent. Okay, it does say lease agreement here. Office building letter, what do we call it here? Letter of intent to lease.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Josh.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the letter of intent to lease space at 1406 North Main Street, Meridian, Idaho, as presented.
Thank you.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Up next, item number 6, our staff presentation. Got 2 special guests here tonight. We're looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
So as they're walking up, Mr. Chair, we have 2 librarians. We have Gabby and Rebecca. Gabby, I'll probably steal a little of her thunder. She's been with us for many years. She is the youth services librarian here at Cherry Lane. Rebecca is the community services librarian at Orchard Park, and they are the head of our programs committee for the district. And so Gabby's the chair, Rebecca's the co-chair, and they lead that committee and the 4 subcommittees under that to organize, plan, and evaluate the programs that we host. And you all had asked for a staff update, and we told them that they were doing this. So I'll hand it over to them.
Okay, I have my story time voice, so I'm sorry if I get too loud. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Nick. So over the last several years here at Meridian, it's been evident that procedures, guidelines, and a process with programs we have suffered a little bit. We've done amazing work, as I know many of you, whether you have come to library programs as a person, bringing a family, or as a board, you know we've had amazing numbers, but we have lacked a process. There hasn't been one. So as Nick said, the programs committee, which is made up of the district's youth services librarians, our community librarians, and our business librarian, began the task of overhauling everything. Especially as we have grown branches and locations, we've wanted to standardize. And what is done, we want you to expect the same thing, whether you're working at Cherry Lane, Orchard Park, Pinnacle, or Unbound, that we have the same processes and the same standards. So we started asking the question, how does staff execute and implement a program from start to finish? It's more than just opening a doors to a story time or teaching a class. You think of the program outline, the shopping list, developing marketing, running it by managers, coordinating with outside partners and presenters. There's a lot of things. So how do we, again, ensure that it is run the same and that it's run well? So we developed an Airtable database. I taught myself Airtable along with a bunch of help, and we built a form where staff have to answer and upload all of these questions and answers. They do it also with their branch manager. And from there, programs are either approved or denied by the programs committee. And things we look at the ratio of staff time versus how much it's going to cost, because we want to make sure we're doing a good return on investment, as well as a program might be low cost, but if it has a big analysis of use of time, staff's time in bringing it forward, is that really profitable for the district and what we should be doing? So it's a cross-location process, and every location is critical of their own programs. I think we all get very critical sometimes. If there's questions or conflicts are caught, we send them back to programmers for revisement. We think of it as the legislative system going back and forth until it's passed, and I would say it's mostly positive outcomes. Standard and guidelines were streamlined and posted on the MLD hub for staff to review. So now all information we're working on getting on one place, so that it is also not held by one person. It is held either by a position, and it is held at a district level, so everybody can find it. We also include attachment where staff programs have improved. Branch managers, librarians, associate librarians were given a training on all of these processes, and hope we start to do it every fiscal year with changes to stats that come into play, anything new finance-wise. And we're very excited. We're going to be streamlining a way of paying presenters and making sure contracts are looked at. We have had legal be reviewing those, and we're getting more in alignment there. So very excited about that. That's actually going to be happening here in the next few weeks. Do you want to talk about data with stuff? Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So I am kind of a numbers geek. I got my bachelor's in math, so they let me do the budgets. I was very excited. So for each of these programs that we propose, everybody has to fill out a standard budget. How much are you going to spend on snacks? How are you going to have any giveaways? If you're doing story times, do you need any cool props or anything? So part of that program process is they're going to fill that out, tell us what they're going to spend their money on, and the programs committee either approves or denies, and then allocates those funds with assistance from Emma. For fiscal year 25, we are currently in quarter 2, planning for quarter 3. We've been doing a really good job of staying on top of our spending. For quarters 1 and 2 in total, programmers had requested about $25,000 to do our programs. Currently, we're only at the $11,000 mark, which I've been really proud of staff finding supplies that we already have in the building. So if they've budgeted for something, but we don't need to buy extras, they're avoiding doing that. We have been serving, as of January 11th, we've had 748 programs with 20,602 attendees, and we've had 36 outreach events with 2,428 patrons that attended those. So we're seeing that even though we're not spending extra money where we don't need to, we're still getting great numbers and having great experiences with patrons at our programs. Looking forward, we're focused on continuing to deliver diverse, high-quality programs that foster learning and connection amongst our patrons. That's one of the big things we want to do, is build that community. And with the continued support from the community, we are excited to meet and exceed our goals for this fiscal year. Up next, we're going to talk about some of our program highlights that we've had so far in quarters 1 and 2.
Okay, so we're going to kind of trade back and forth off a little bit, but we wanted to be able, it's a collective effort. And we've been hearing a lot like that you all want to know, like, what are some of the programs we're doing and hear the stories. So we're going to share just a few fun stories. So at Cherry Lane, we held a program that I'm very proud of. It was called Family Portrait Day. Staff had read in national publications about libraries providing family photos for those who could not afford them. And we wanted to try that program here. So what we did is we targeted schools that we reach with our My First Books program, which are lower income Title I ELL magnet schools. And we were able to reach 32 families by using two professional photographers who gave us amazing discount rates. Next year, we want to expand the program to more locations and or more dates to serve more families. One family said they were brought to tears that the library would offer something like this of a program. And others said they have never gotten family photos before because it has been a barrier. And another family who's a teacher at one of the schools actually cried to me and said it meant so much to get all of her teenage children together for the memories. So I think that sums up completely what the library is doing and just ways of making a positive impact. And so Pinnacle, we partnered with, they partner with Brighton. They hosted a winter farmers market and they brought Santa in for special story time and art. Families could stop and visit, have craft stations, get a photo with Santa, and they had over 200 people in attendance as well, which is really, really awesome. Do you want to talk about the networking breakfast? Perfect.
So over at the Unbound Library, we routinely have these networking breakfast programs that have been a huge hit to the point where we are having to get more and more food because we're running out of breakfast. The networking breakfast at Unbound has grown and continues to grow. This time in January, they had 36 patrons. Their presenter was our digital services librarian, Erin Stoddart. She went over our amazing databases and Udemy, and after her presentation, they had 5 people sign up for library cards, which at Unbound is very exciting. At the regular libraries, we get library cards all the time. At Unbound, less so. And then the final program that we're going to talk about happened at my branch. It was our Pokemon tournament that we hosted last Saturday. It's the first tournament we've had at Orchard Park, and it was a huge turnout. We had 16 kiddos that were battling to become the Orchard Park Pokemon champion, but we had a total of 98 participants show up. In our program room, we were watching some Pokemon movies through our Swank license, and then in our learning lab, that's where the battle happened. If you look at the end of this, I've got some really cute pictures of the kiddos who participated. We decided instead of kind of boring trophies, we were going to hand out Pokemon plushies. So you can see the kids, they're very excited to get their stuffies. All of this to say, we are very appreciative of the funds that you guys let us use to serve our community in this way. And we get to have a lot of really fun and positive stories to reflect on.
And then lastly, we just kind of give a wrap up of what are things that are upcoming. And so spring programming has occurred for all of our locations, and that kicks off. So Q3, which will be in March. And some highlights are going to be a 90s night, which is an after hours program here at Cherry Lane for our teens. They're very excited because it's vintage and retro. I love that 90s are retro. We're going to do an Out with the Old at the Cherry Lane Library. That's going to be a crafting program for the entire family. And again, a lot with Cherry Lane and prep for our renovation is utilizing materials that we already have and also letting people feel like they're taking a piece of Cherry Lane with them. So that's something. Pinnacle is partnering with Thrive Pediatrics, which is a pediatric office that is in their parking lot. And they're going to be bringing in experts on various areas of child development. So very excited to be offering that to our families. And then I'll let you touch on Orchard Park.
So at Orchard Park, one of our programs that we had to discontinue temporarily was our preschool story time. We got feedback from patrons, though, that the reason why they weren't attending was because it was right in the middle of nap time. So we've changed this program so that we can offer it in the early afternoon, so we're not interfering with naps and we can get those families in. So we're very excited to bring that back. At Unbound, they're going to be offering an improv and public speaking series for adults. Also at Orchard Park, we have a writing workshop coming up for adults and teens who are writing creative nonfiction. It's going to be a smaller, intimate group where people can get some advice on their writing and then also get feedback in that smaller group setting. We also will have gardening classes. With March, we're talking about herb gardening. In April, we will talk about how to transition your spring garden into a summer garden.
Okay, and just kind of like final wrapping up is it might not seem like it, but we're actually going pretty light for spring, and that's done with strategy in mind because spring is one of our busiest times of outreach. We will try to visit all of the kindergartens in the West Ada School District for kindergarten registration, and that will be happening all the month of March. So we work with Ada Community and Boise Public Libraries, and whatever is definitely within Meridian city limits and ones that maybe others cannot reach, we hit. Typically, that will mean Meridian Library will go to 17 of the elementary schools in the area where we get to give kindergartners books, make those first connections. So we're very, very, very excited about that coming up. And then we always get asked to those end of school year carnivals. We're going to be taking the bookmobile out in the month of April during a lot of sport times. We're going to be visiting 3 different public parks with the bookmobile. And then we are also heavily hard at work planning our summer reading program, which actually it kicks off May 23rd at Settlers Park. So that is a little bit about what is going on with the programs committee, where we've been and where we're headed. So thank you.
Gary, Rebecca, thank you.
Absolutely.
Questions or comments from the board? I've got some. Don't go away.
Okay.
Okay, so when I'm at church or at work and somebody says, "What's a program?" How do you? So it's a library term. What's your best way to explain it in 2 or 3 sentences to a
Okay.
non-library person?
To a non-library person, I would say a program is an event where it occurs within the library walls, and it is often it can be. Okay. So Nick might have a different definition. Rebecca, how would you define a program?
I would also lean towards events that happen within the library with like specific asterisks, right? They're oftentimes educational programs or community building events, times where we're inviting the community in to see what we can offer to them.
I will add in my 2 cents. So, in the simplest terms, a library program is a class event, a class or an event. And we might put a modifier on it by saying it's an outreach program, but a program is a library-led class or event, either in a library or in the community.
So outreach is off premise
Correct.
generally.
Correct.
Outreach is anything off library property. Otherwise, it's just called a program.
Okay.
So it's a modifier, but it's still a story time is a story time, regardless of where you do it.
Just a personal experience. I was at the Cherry Lane desk sometime last year, and I heard a parent. They saw the flyer for a Pokemon event, and they were so excited because they had a child that was his world, and he wasn't too interested in books necessarily, but she knew that if she could entice him with this Pokemon event, that he would have a good experience, and I was just happy to hear that. And I've also really appreciated the printed brochures that have been out there 6 months, a year now.
Yes.
For somebody that likes to see something in writing rather than looking at it online, I really like that because I can take it home and flip through it and see what's there. So whoever's idea that was, great idea.
We've had a lot of feedback. Patrons really love having that print brochure. I like you, Mr. Chairman. I like to have that in my hand. And we've had a lot of patron feedback. We're looking at continuing ways that we can grow that and how we can also use that as a good marketing tool and gaining sponsorships and all sorts of things. We have plans in the works, but I love that we have that for our patrons.
Okay. And when you're ready to do 80s night, please let me know. Okay?
You got it. Absolutely. Yes.
Other questions or comments? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 7, our monthly director's report. Nick.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for giving that. They do a lot of work in not only their tasks as librarian at their branch, but also helping new librarians, new associate librarians as they onboard and learn how to do programs the Meridian way. And so they've been invaluable in, like they said, completely revamping the process from top to bottom. And it hasn't been easy, especially trying to get everybody on the same page across the district. And so I can't say enough about how amazing they've done on that. So before I get into my thing, I just wanted to say kudos to them on everything that they've been doing. With that, I put in the board report our update, the director update tonight because I forgot that it wasn't in there. So more to read through later on recap, but I'll run through a lot of it. And I'll have Lucille jump in and assist me as well. But I wanted to start off with an update from the Meridian Library Foundation. They did a campaign at the end of the calendar year, and they were able to donate a lot of games and activity supplies to Orchard Park and Pinnacle, and to be able to get some stuff for outside at Pinnacle. One of the things that we were seeing was that families and patrons in general like to be able to check out some of these items, and they also like to be able to use them at the facilities, at the branches. And so looking at having a mixture of the two, and they were able to donate a lot of really cool games. My family played a few of these that we were able to recommend, probably the nerdiest of them being the World game. My kids are obsessed with that, and I hope other families enjoy it as well. So if you want to learn the world capitals and populations, that's a great one to get into. But very happy with the work that the foundation has done and continues to do to support our operations across the district. Next, I wanted to pull out some stats to be able to talk about them. So these are quarterly stats from the first quarter of this fiscal year, so October, November, December. And this is a look at our reservable rooms across the district. And so we have rooms at all 4 branches where people can reserve space to go in and use. They all differ slightly, but we have study rooms at Cherry Lane, Orchard Park, and Pinnacle. And so that's represented there. And the number is not the number of people, that is actually the number of reserved slots. So we had almost 1,200 uses of our reserved spaces in the first quarter of this fiscal year. And we'll go ahead and swap to the next one. This is a breakdown of that same number, but by location. And so you can see why, when we're talking about building out these branches, why we put so much time and effort into making sure that we have reservable space. One of the things that our community has told us time and time again over the last decade of doing all of these projects is that having space is very, very important to them, and making it usable space that they can reserve, that they can use, and have differing needs. So if you can go back to that last slide, when we're looking at this, study rooms are a huge use of how the public comes in reserved spaces, but also the larger rooms, the conference rooms, the meeting rooms, the special use rooms, which are the Orchard Park Sensory Room that we just approved to be reservable a couple meetings ago, and then the Unbound Sound Studio, which has a very specific use. It is has been remodeled with new sound installation. The original was starting to chip and peel, and so we replaced that. It didn't get replaced correctly the first time, so we started over with the company that had installed the original, and it's almost complete, I'd say. Finishing touches on the sound studio, but it's usable now, and that is a high use space over at Unbound. It's one of the main drivers of people coming back to use the space is that sound studio. So our rooms meet different needs for different people, and I think we've done a good job of having variety across the district. Next, talking about our resources and how they've been used in the first quarter. And so when we look at digital, we're looking at Overdrive primarily for this, and then physical. You can see the difference with digital being heavily used by the adult population, and our physical materials being predominantly used by youth materials. So it's something that we have to balance as we build out our collection, both physical and digital, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community and meeting them where they are with what they're seeking. And so this is kind of a cool, unique way to look at some of the statistics rather than just a numbers, like how many things checked out, but what is checking out. But not only what is checking out in what format. So I thought this is a cool way to be able to show you a different way of looking at some of this data. And then go to the next. When we're looking at why are we putting so much resources into digital, this is why. When we look at that, we can see that we have thousands upon thousands of holds on items every month. And to be able to get those hold numbers down, we have to buy more, obviously. And so if it's digital, one would think, well, why is there hold times? Why can't everybody have access to it all the time? That is not how the publishing world allows public libraries to operate for the most part. It's one copy, one person. And so if, you know, the Fourth Wing series comes out with a new book at the end of the month, Onyx something, you know, we're going to have to buy many, many copies of it, both as a ebook and as an e-audiobook, because there's going to be so many people that want it. And so we need to have as many as we can to cut down on that wait time, but there's a limit on how much we can do because we still have to have a balanced collection. But the average hold time there is a little over 32 days. And then annual cost per user for this last fiscal year was $4.02. That does not account for items that we already had in our collection. That's unique users for the money spent this last fiscal year for the e-content materials. So just putting some different perspective and different numbers to this to show you all, like I said, a new way or a different way of looking at some of the things that we talk about often. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on a few different things that didn't have pictures for. So we'll just go off my little notebook here. But we already talked about the annex replacement with the lease agreement that we're going to have for that office space. We also have, as we continually talk about, or at least allude to, the Cherry Lane renovation. It is the fourth project in the plant facility levy that was passed in 2019 by the voters. And so it'll be the final project in that with the plant facility levy. And we put that one at the end because we knew that this one would be the most complex and the most expensive. In terms of building, it's cheaper to go build a new building than it is to renovate an existing building that was built in the 90s. So there's more complexities to it in terms of being able to properly retrofit it. And so it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have. We're excited to be tackling it. I will have a more complete rundown of where we're at in February with the timeline, costs, and things like that, and what our plans are for staff at the February meeting. But for now, we just received the schematic design from the architects. They are now working on the final design pieces and getting final numbers on everything. They will also be doing user focus groups with staff and some community members on some final pieces in the coming weeks. And we look forward to stepping into that next phase, which is finalizing all of the pieces before permits get pulled and construction gets started sometime in probably this summer. So I will be able to run through pictures and graphs and timelines and plans next month, but just kind of wanted to give you all a quick update of where we're at with that process. Another piece that we kind of talked about, but wanted to reiterate, we had some staff changes with our assistant director of operations stepping down. And so we have moved the material services manager from a department manager to an admin manager. And so that position will now report directly to me and be moving into the annex, or not the annex, into the admin building with us. And that will kind of coincide with bringing on a material services supervisor. And one of the pieces with that is we will be moving the home delivery team, the 2 drivers that we have, the 2 library couriers, into the material services department, and they will report to the material services director. So currently that is housed out of the Cherry Lane branch, but in preparation for moving out of Cherry Lane and being able to maintain that service, we're going to be transitioning that group to the material services team so that we can make use of home delivery during the time of construction to continue getting books out to people. We've committed resources and time to make sure that we're well established in being able to execute on that service going forward. And then we also brought over some of the other people that reported to Jason, and they now report to Dan in his new resource or district resources department. We had established that in October, but now we have fully filled out that team with IT, facilities, marketing, and an admin assistant. And so one of the questions that staff had asked me at one of my Ask the Director video series that we do every month was, with these changes, does that mean that our org chart changes that we had done a few years ago now were broken? And I said, actually, it's the opposite. With the org chart that we built it so that it would be able to flex and make adaptations as we go. And that flexibility is part of why we designed our organizational structure the way that we have, so that we can make those pivots and changes without completely starting over anytime a change has to happen. So I feel like we've done a really good job of setting the stage for being able to adapt to what happens in real time versus being retroactive or in how we respond to those things. And so I'm very proud of how our staff have responded to all of that. Another staff one, we have staff day next month on President's Day. So the library branches will be closed on February 17th. And we will have our annual staff development day on that day. And we're looking forward to doing some training and some team building that we don't have a chance to get together as a district very often. You know, we're well over 100 staff, and so it's spread across a pretty wide area, and so it's nice to be able to get everybody together. We have also been researching the best way for the district to update our strategic plan this year. I know we talked about that last year. We have it tentatively budgeted for this year, but we're going to need to utilize most of those funds for the Cherry Lane renovation. And so looking at how can we do it properly without spending the total sum of having a library specific consultant come in and help us with that. So we've looked into some options. We don't have anything presentation ready, but I hope to have that either by February or March that I can bring forward and present to you all a plan of how we want to execute the strategic plan during this fiscal year. And then another piece that I had was we have to complete an annual state survey. So we just wrapped that up and got that submitted for the year, and I'll bring some highlights of that in my February report on some of the statistical pieces that jumped out as we submitted that. There's like 500 questions, so wasn't ready to pull those out for this meeting, but I'll have it ready to share in February. And then last thing I have before I hand it over to Seal is we did get a request for reconsideration on Wednesday last week. We are going through the process of it now. I will have a report to you once that is completed. And I've conferred with legal on next steps to let you know if you have pieces that you will need to prepare for and adjudicate at the February meeting. So I don't know what we're going to have on that or not, but just kind of giving you a heads up that that is out there and could very likely be on the February board meeting agenda.
Thank you, Nick. I think between Nick and the wonderful job Gabby and Rebecca did highlighting some of the most exciting programs, I don't have all that much to fill you in on, but I will touch on a few things. First, the sound studio, as Nick mentioned, is nearing completion, but it is currently available for the public to use. And some of our power users have given us great feedback on the sound quality, which is really promising because the change in material, we didn't know, we work with the same company who assured us, but you never know until you start trying that the sound quality will be just as good. So we're hearing that the sound quality is great. We just, there were some finishing touches, more cosmetic than anything, that we wanted touched up before we consider the job complete. So sound studio is going. Sensory room, we talked about the room reservation policy in the November board meeting, and you guys approved that being open for reservation. I think that's going really well. The whole idea behind that was that everyone who needs to, the folks who want to use the room need to use it for different reasons. Some need to sit in the dark, some want to yell, some want to bounce off the walls. But if it's open for everyone to use at once, those needs aren't going to be met. So now that we're able to make reservations and folks are able to use it individually, I think those needs are being met, and it's well received by the community. Orchard Park and Cherry Lane served as polling locations in the November election, so we had amazing community turnout for the election. Cherry Lane was open extra late because there were so many new voters that needed to be registered, so they stayed open pretty late. So that was really nice to be able to be open for that for our community. Our junior librarian position concluded, so we started with 2 junior librarians last year. One of them obtained, so those were temporary positions. One of them obtained a permanent position here at the Cherry Lane branch as a library assistant, and the other one was able to complete the program, worked alongside librarians and all other staff to really learn all the aspects of the job. So we consider that a great success in that program. And then we had a fun watch party in collaboration with PBS, Carl the Collector, that has characters on the autism spectrum. So families were invited to come watch an episode or 2, I believe. So I think that was really fun for the community, and that kind of ties into the sensory room and that theme of some of the features of that library. So I think we had a great 2 months, no snow days yet. So that's been good. No closures. Yeah, knock on wood. So yeah, thank you.
Finish one last thing is our winter reading program has started. So it's not as big as our summer reading program, but it's a great program. We partner with the Steelheads, and if you're interested in more information on that, stop by one of the help desks or visit the website. There's lots of great information on that. And I did get an update. I mentioned when I was talking about the digital resources and the holds, the book called Onyx Storm is the 3rd book in the Fourth Wing series. If you haven't read them, very good. It hasn't been released yet. It comes out very soon, but there's 153 holds for the e-audio book on that already, and 72 holds for the ebook. So it looks like I will be buying that book.
Great, thanks, gentlemen. Questions for Nick and or Lucille? Laura, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Nick, I appreciate the data on the digital collection. I love actually seeing that, and again, compared to print, I love seeing that children are actually more gravitating more to print. I think that's good for kids. And I'm curious about the price comparison between a digital resource and a physical copy, and then what's the annual cost per user for a physical copy?
I have the perfect person to help find that information for us in either February or March. It might be March that we come back to this, but we can definitely work on that, getting that for you.
My second question, well, it was really my third, is at what point, what's your number to determine if you need to buy, based on holds, buy another copy of a digital resource?
I don't know. I will have to check with them. I think it can be highly dependent. And the tricky thing with the content is that, unlike physical materials, we can't offer that hold list with another library. With content, it's currently set up to have libraries kind of independent on that. And so unlike if I pick up a physical copy of it and it has 150 holds and we buy 10 copies and Boise buys 50 copies, we might be able to use some of their physical copies at a certain point holds. And so it can get really tricky. We try to keep it at, I'm reading this, 12 to 1 for digital and 3 to 1 for print. Currently, digital is at 11 to 1 in terms of hold to copy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Josh, go ahead.
Nick, Laura, I think those are excellent questions. And anytime you talk about cost versus a time equation, my first thought is, 5 weeks is not terribly long for folks to have to wait to get their, hands on the hottest, latest items. And I think that's a very reasonable number. My question is, if we move that bar and manage expectations and said, hey, listen up, community, we're going to go to a 70-day versus a 35-day goal, would that have the cost? Would it have an enormous financial impact in a beneficial way? Or is it one of those, because of the way the system operates and works, there's not really a direct correlation between those two?
I would say you'd see some, but it wouldn't be the best use of funds to meet the community want and community need. And so part of building a balanced collection is meeting the expectations of the public of what they want to check out. So if, they want to read Harry Potter, but they don't want to read John Grisham, well, we're buying a lot more of the Harry Potter. We might still buy some John Grisham, but it might be, 20 to 1, if for whatever reason. So yes and no. I think there's also a certain amount of supply and demand that comes into play. And so at a certain point, personally, if the hold's going to be super long and I'm really anxious to read it, at that point, I'm going to go buy it. And so at a certain point, we can't truly see the impact of that play out, because people will jump off the list because they've got it by other means. And so we don't want to deter people from using us by not having what they're looking for.
I do like the feature where you can defer your hold.
Yes.
That has been a big change for me, because then I don't feel like I've got to read it now. I just put it off for 2 weeks and let somebody else have it. So that's good.
100% agree.
Nick, I got a couple questions. Just for the benefit of the public that may be watching or here in the room, can you talk about the fee structure for the reserved conference rooms?
Yes. I will try to do it off the top of my head while I pull
First
it up.
hour is free.
First
right?
hour is free for every room in our district. That is a change that you all made about 1.5 years ago, to have that first hour free. That is something that we didn't have previously. And then from there, it goes $15 an hour for the smaller rooms, I'm doing this off the top of my head until
That's fine.
someone pulls
Just,
up, but
just general. I
it's
just
about,
wanted to put
I
it
think
out there.
the large conference room, I think, is like $30 an hour after that first hour. And the reason we do that is to ensure the availability of the room for as many people in the public as possible. It's similar to like what the reason a municipality would have a parking meter fee is. It encourages turnover, but it doesn't discourage people from using that use beyond what is already there. And so allowing for both to be true.
Great, thank you. Vasily, you talked about power users of this sound studio.
Yeah.
How many power users approximately would you say we have?
I'd say about a dozen or so.
Are they podcasters?
Yes,
Okay.
most of them are podcasters. Yeah. One of them, I don't know. I hope they don't mind me shouting them out. Rope Drop Park Hop. They do a Disney park theme park sort of podcast, and I looked them up on Apple Music. They had like 500 5-star reviews, so they're actually doing big things coming out of Unbound, and so they've been great because we've built a relationship with them, and they've been able to give us really honest feedback on the space, on the layout that's changed over time, equipment that maybe time to replace, some old microphones, mic stands. And so, yeah, I'd say about a dozen or so, but I've also been away from there for a year. So it may be up a little, maybe down a little.
Okay, great, thank you. One of my favorite parts of the district's facilities. All right, if there's no other questions or comments for our director, we'll move on to item number 8, which is future agenda items. We've touched on a few tonight, hopefully an audit report either next month or the following month. Continue to talk about the Cherry Lane remodel, strategic planning plan, perhaps, stats from the state survey, and some ebook stats presentation in a little more detail. Any other items trustees would like to have on the agenda? Well, go ahead.
Any legislative updates that might impact us financially or policy-wise?
Josh Destin? Josh?
Mr. Chair, I just had a question. Oh, is the meeting with legislators still happening here at the library every Friday morning?
So that is Coffee with the Legislators. That is hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, and it typically is at a hotel for chamber members, and it is every other Friday during the legislative session.
Destin, any items you have? Okay. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to the adjournment of the meeting, item number 9. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Our meeting is adjourned.